Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be with you. I'm so excited to be with you. Of course, my name is Terry. I'm a transformational coach, and I'm just so blessed to be part of the Warriors this year and to just share my story and talk about all things that are related to trauma. So, you can expect to see me every 2 weeks, and we're going to be talking about going from a trauma based sense of just existing to actually authentically living and becoming who you are always meant to be. So I hope that you'll join me every 2 weeks. And of course, if you're with me now, let me know in the comments where you are in the world. Where are you watching us from? And we'll get straight into it after our little intro. Oh, you're going to have to bear with me and my technical skills or lack of. Um, oh, I'm clicking the wrong one. So here we go. Let's try that again. So I'm having a little giggle at myself, as I normally do when it comes to all things technical. Adam really took some time out today just to tell me how it all works on the back end. And the one thing he told me not to do was click the video twice. And what did I do? I clicked it twice. So lesson learned. Now I understand how to actually use this now. And so whoever's joined me, let me know. Where are you? Where are you watching me from? Which platform are you joining us from? And of course, if you catch me on a replay, please give me a hashtag replay. And of course, if you catch on the replay, feel free to still ask questions. I can always jump on afterwards and just get back to you. This show is really just about, not just sharing my story, but really reaching those that have been through their own traumas and, are going through their own journey of self-discovery so that you never have to feel alone. There are so many of us doing the work. So reach out and let's talk about it. So if I just tell you a little bit about myself, I'm sure that you can hear that I'm not from the UK, even though this is where I live. I'm actually from South Africa. I have been traveling, however, since 2019. And that's really where my transformation and healing began, is when I decided to leave South Africa and travel Southeast Asia. Sounds kind of cushy, doesn't it? But the beginning wasn't so lush. It was a bit dark, and I really had to check in with myself and figure out what was going wrong in my life. And really start taking radical responsibility for, everything that had happened up until that point. And this is what has led me to obviously my passion today, and just sharing, my story and helping others share theirs. Trauma is something that many of us, even though, it's not something we ask for, it is something that many of us have had to go through at some point in our lives. So I talk a lot about childhood trauma, and that's just because, I've come through a lot myself, and I've overcome, childhood trauma. But not only that, I have raised my kids from that trauma kind of wound, if we can call it that, and of course all the conditioning and programming. So I think that in that sense, my children have gone through their own trauma as well, and just now looking at it without the trauma lens and realizing that we all have this need to heal at some point. So this has become something that I'm very passionate about. And today I just want to kind of introduce the topic of trauma and how it shows up in our adult lives, okay? Because I think a lot of the time we just push all of that yucky stuff as far back as we possibly can, because we don't want to think about it. We don't want we don't want to feel that way again. And that's where the ego comes in, is trying to protect us, and those coping mechanisms are always there as well, just so that we never have to feel that way ever again. And living this way as an adult is not always helpful. So sometimes it's just nice to kind of shine a light on that, or hear that somebody else is also going through the same thing, and then realize that it's really okay. We all have a story, and we need to just remember that that's exactly what it is. It's just a story. It doesn't define us. Our past doesn't define us, and it surely doesn't dictate to how the rest of our life needs to be. So I think it's important that we shine a light on these things, acknowledge these behaviors and patterns that we see in our lives, so that we can move forward, that we can begin healing, because it's really important that we do that, and not just for ourselves and our own sanity, but for our kids as well. If you've got kids, or even, the partner that you end up being with, sometimes we end up bleeding all over the people that didn't cut us, so that is just something that's so close to my heart, and that's just simply my own trauma and seeing people suffer, and I personally made it my goal to just kind of create so much chaos around me, because that's how I grew up. So that was my safe space, just to live in absolute chaos. And then afterwards, I would, be the victim of my own chaos, like, oh my God, my life is falling apart. So I really had to take some serious radical responsibility. I had to own my own BS and decide to start moving forward and making those changes. And I know that it's not easy. These habits have taken years for us to kind of create and form. So it doesn't just happen overnight, but just a little bit every single day really, really will make a difference. Okay. So I'm just going to share, a few things that obviously I've picked up along the way. And please, if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat box and I can discuss them with you as I go along. And yeah, let me know, if any of this relates to you. And I'd also really love for people to kind of just comment or reach out to me and let me know what they hope to see from me, in terms of this kind of topic. I'm so excited. I hope still, the first guest speaker that I will have on my next show. And we're really going to dive even deeper into, those trauma wounds and how they actually show up, and, talk about how far it can actually go. Like, I know we don't want to talk about suicide, but that's the reality of the situation, that this stuff that is just unhealed, and we just feel so lost sometimes that it just feels like it's the only way out. And I know I was at that point, so I think it's going to be so exciting to talk about that as well. So for me to dive straight in, I want you to just think about the word childhood, right? So, like, how does that word make you feel? If you have to think about your own childhood, do you feel happy? Do you feel like sunshine and daisies, or do you feel a little uncomfortable? Does that feel a little dark and gloomy? You know, do you remember your childhood, or is it something that you have forgotten? You know? So I'd really love to know how that makes you feel. Okay, so for me personally, I don't really remember much of my childhood, and the parts that I do remember very clearly make me very sad, and the ones I remember faintly make me really happy. So it's a bit of mixed emotion, but I'm slowly starting to remember things, which is really awesome. So if we think about this word, and I don't ask you to think about it so deeply, but this word should draw up images of like innocence, joy, optimism, and wonder, right? So childhood is a time of, let's say, security and being protected and absolutely loved. And like, if we think about love, it should be that unconditional love that a child gets, right? And having that stability and knowing that you are protected by your family. And this really just allows you to form a solid and safe relationship, right, with the people in your life, and with yourself for that matter. When we think about childhood, you can think about when you're born up until you're 7. Those are the most vulnerable, yet you are a sponge. You're literally just taking everything in. So those first 7 years of your life are so important. They're a very vital piece of the puzzle, that shapes and mold who you will become as an adult, simply because you develop all of your beliefs in that age. Okay. So that ideal definition that I did give you, I'm just having a look because I'm not seeing comments here, but I'm seeing on my phone. Okay, no, we're good. So that ideal definition that I've given you and that experience that childhood should be, some people can't actually relate to that, and that wasn't their reality. Some experiences may have really left them traumatized, and obviously it affects the rest of their life, and the experiences that they begin to face. So if we think about childhood trauma, what might that look like? Okay, so of course there are different variations of trauma, even in adult life. Okay, but if we think about childhood traumas being witnessing like a traumatic event, because remember, as a child, you just don't understand these things. So a traumatic event, having a serious illness, like requiring surgery or hospitalization. I remember my son at 6 months having to be hospitalized for bronchial pneumonia, and this little baby, and I have to now leave the hospital. I'm not sure how it is here in the UK. Like when my daughter now went in for her tonsils, at least I could just fall asleep next to her. But I think it's also because we waited for a doctor for so long. So I'm not sure how it really works here. But in South Africa, depending on the hospital, you have to actually leave your baby overnight. So you can imagine what that does to a child. They have no idea what's going on, and their mom just goes and there's all these strangers. That can be very traumatic. What about witnessing domestic violence? And this is what I see with my beautiful daughter. you know um just how that has affected her whole life. It's just been so interesting to watch it unfold, and so sad at the same time. But I honestly believe I was gifted with this beautiful little girl so that I could understand and start healing myself, that we could do this together. um Also think about intense bullying. Sometimes going to school can be very, very traumatizing, right? We never know what happens in the school playgrounds. And sometimes children don't even talk about these things. They might just think that's normal, or, if they're feeling so worthless, it's not even worth talking about, right? Then, of course, we have something even more serious like physical or sexual abuse. And we can think about, what about refugees? That kind of trauma. So these are just a few things that obviously a child can go through, and you can just think about how that would make a child feel. I mean, we as adults are often unable to even process these life events happening now as an adult. So imagine the scale and scope through a child's eyes, and trying to actually process these experiences and trying to understand their role in that experience, and what has actually happened. So as you get to know me, I'll obviously talk about uh, trauma, and I will always kind of reference to myself, because obviously I'll never disclose anything that I do with my clients. But just as a reference and a trigger warning, I have no problem being vulnerable. And I only share my story because I feel like it's important for others to maybe hear it and know that they can, heal these parts of themselves, and they can, regain their voice and potentially be the light for somebody else. Okay, so if I do share it, I'm really sorry. But that's just how I roll, and you'll get used to that. And of course, please, if any of this does relate to you, and you ever feel like you're in a dark place, please know that you can reach out to me at any time. And of course, you can reach out to any of the other warriors as well. This is exactly what we are hoping to achieve, is just get the message out there and just stand together and make people remember that they're not alone, not as alone as others make them feel, or, you know, that stupid little box that we all get pushed into because of mental health. But we don't have to do it alone. Okay, so just remember that. So if I just think about my childhood trauma, right? So unfortunately, these things happened, you know, and I can't, obviously, it all built me as I am today. And the journey's been quite interesting. But of course, your trauma absolutely breaks you. So I am an NA survivor. And what is the abbreviation? CSA survivor. I just have to remember all these abbreviations. Gosh, I feel like an old lady when I go like, and I watch TikTok and I'm like, abbreviations? What does this mean? Google. But so obviously I've gone through quite a bit of childhood trauma, and I just think about me remembering those things as an adult is a lot for the system, right? It's a lot to take on and to have to deal with as an adult. And thank goodness my beautiful subconscious is just drip feeding it to me, because I think I would explode if it wasn't just being drip fed in little portions. Like, I'm only remembering what I can deal with each time I work through a layer, you know. So if I just think about that, I can't imagine how I felt as a child, just being so confused by the situation. You know, like one moment you're being told that you're so special, and then the next moment you're being thrown away. Like, where's my mom? What's happening? You know, it's very, very confusing. And you can think about even something as small as divorce. Kids don't understand it, and then they internalize it, right? Then they just automatically think that they have done something wrong. Okay, like mom or dad left because of me, you know. It's really, really hard for them to just process these things and not put all the blame on themselves. Okay, so that's why we end up carrying a lot of guilt, shame, unworthiness. So just remembering that children don't actually filter information the same way that we do. Okay. And oftentimes they will blame themselves because they have no other point of reference as to why these things are happening. And especially if they're stuck in situations that are kind of on repeat and keep happening, like an abusive household or something like that, right? So why am I mentioning all this doom and gloom? Okay, and what is the purpose of this? And I know that it's not easy to kind of dig up these wounds if you have been through any of these things. But I promise you, the moment you decide you can look at it and heal it, you will set yourself free. Okay. So childhood trauma actually chips away at any child's stability and sense of self, as I mentioned, and it undermines their self-worth, and often it just moves right through the child's whole life and into adult life, into adulthood. So this trauma can also impact a person's like way of living, their way of thinking, the way they experience things, and they often feel like emotions that they can't explain, and feelings of shame and guilt and feelings of discomfort and not really being able to relate to others, or troubles controlling emotions. And I often find a very heightened sense of anxiety or depression, and like anger. Like, you can imagine you're angry with the world because you didn't get to grow up like every other child, or like the children in the movies, right? So all of these things build up, and it really does lead to that mental health that we have to deal with as adults. Okay, I, for one, lived with tremendous amounts of anxiety. You know, I couldn't even just be around people. I would have a panic attack, you know? So it's really, really hard. And we need to look at these things so that we can understand where it comes from. And even depression, you know, you're stuck in that past like cycle, right? And it's heartbreaking to think that anybody has to go through this. And I see that we've got a comment. I experienced childhood trauma from a narcissistic mother. I actually just got goosebumps reading that. I hear you. I feel you. You know, it's not easy. And I know that what I'm about to say sounds absolutely crazy. And like if you're still in a place where you're healing or trying to heal, that it doesn't make sense to have compassion, right? Or like look at them with eyes of compassion. You know, I never thought I would ever be able to do that with my own mom, after the life I had lived with her. But now I understand that my mom had her own trauma that she never looked at and will never look at. She will always be stuck there, you know, and that was the only thing that set me free from that hold that that relationship had on me, was to heal that, to learn to forgive her and learn to forgive myself, because I also felt responsible for some of the things that I went through, you know. So I get that. And narcissism is such a horrible, horrible thing to have to be on the other end of. Awful. I found that telling my story in my book was a great form of therapy. That's so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I can only see that you're a Facebook user. Forgive, rebuild, grow. I just want to jump on here because I want to see who I am actually speaking to. I hope that's okay. I don't see the other warriors doing it, but this is how I do it. So let's see if I can. Karina. Okay. I can hear myself talking more. But I agree. Forgive, rebuild, and grow. Absolutely. It's all we can do. And, you know, forgiveness really is the key. You know, if we can't forgive, we will never be free. And I know that sounds so crazy. Like, how can you forgive someone for doing that to you as a child? Well, if I don't forgive them, I'm going to be beating myself up for the rest of my life. I'm never going to move forward. I'm never going to be the mother I need to be to my own children, because I'm then raising my kids through my own trauma lens, and therefore putting all of that shit on them that my mom put on me. So I think that it's very important to realize how important healing this is. Healing this is. I thought I twisted my English. So just understanding like how far this goes and how it actually shows up in your adult life is so important, because then it just allows you to kind of just start healing one little thing at a time. I mean, you can't just take everything on at one go. You can't. And I really encourage you to work with somebody, you know, somebody that you trust, somebody that can relate to you, and find that person that you can confide in. Okay. So now imagine, and maybe you can relate already, but imagine what living your adult life must be like if you have no sense of self-worth, no real identity, living in shame, and permanently feeling guilty. Like, how would that feel? Just imagine that for a moment, if that's not you, because I can tell you that was me for a very, very long time. And the strangest thing is that we do it and we don't even realize we're doing it. We just begin to think that that's our fate and that's how the cookie crumbles, you know, and this is how we're supposed to spend the rest of our lives. But it's not. So the moment we can create that awareness and that acknowledgement, we can then move forward. We can then be free from that trauma. I always, always, always say that your past does not define you. At any moment, you can just take that pen back and start writing the next chapter. the way that you want the chapter to be. Okay. Let's see. Living like that is absolutely horrid and very bleak. I agree. Absolutely agree. It's no way to live. But unfortunately, a lot of us get trapped there. I mean, I think I only started waking up and realizing that this toxic pattern and the cycle that I was going through, and just constantly numbing with things that didn't even make me happy, only when I turned 30. So you can imagine, that's like what, at least 15 years of just being lost, more than that. So if we can just wake up, and that's why the warriors, each of us have a story, each of us have a message, because we just want to reach people and let them know that there is space to heal, so that generations to come don't have to go through the things that we've had to go through. It's up to us to make a change now. So if we think about self-sabotage, right, and what that actually means, so sabotaging your own life and just living in that constant cycle, hey? And then you wonder why on earth you're actually doing that to yourself. And in all honesty, I talk about the ego quite often with the ladies that I work with. And I always remind them just to think about that ego as a child having a temper tantrum, so that you can understand to be kind and care for that ego still. Because if you think about your ego, it is that wounded inner child of yours, just trying to protect you from feeling the way that you did as a child. So unfortunately, it keeps you small and it keeps you safe. So you never venture out, you never go out of your comfort zone, you never try new things. So if you can really start healing those parts of yourself, it becomes exciting. Like now, I would never, ever go live. And now I'm able to do that just because I'm working on myself every single day. I'm ensuring that my cup is full, overflowing most of the time. And that doesn't make me selfish. It makes me smart. Because if I do that and I care for myself and I love myself, and I work on myself, it overflows into the rest of my life. I now have healthier relationships with my kids. I rekindled the love with my husband, because I pushed him so far away because I believed that I never deserved him. Thank goodness he never gave up on me. So, but that's a story for another time. But all of these things are so possible, and I, for one, was one of those people that just constantly numbed. I thought that I was an absolute extrovert and I had so many friends, and we used to go drinking and jawling and all those things together just to realize I'm actually an introvert. I love being at home. I don't enjoy drinking. I was just doing all of those things to numb and to feel like something or feel nothing all at the same time. So I want you to ask yourself 2 questions. Well, I want to ask you, if you ever ask yourself 2 questions. Do you ever find yourself just saying like, why do I keep doing this? Or how does this keep happening to me? Do you ever find yourself asking these questions because you notice that pattern, right? You can see that the same things are happening. And maybe you can even see that you are doing that to yourself. So you might actually ask these questions when you feel trapped, right, in those patterns. Maybe you feel a bit stuck and these patterns keep creating problems in your life and they actually keep you from achieving the goals that you want to achieve. And although you really, really try to make changes to disrupt those patterns, you end up in the same place over and over and over again. So raise your hand. Let me know in the comments if that is you, because that was me for a very, very long time. So if it does sound familiar, you could be sabotaging yourself, and that's okay. A lot of us do it. A lot of us have done it. Like I still, when I get scared, because I've just launched a business and I'm stepping into, another role in my life, and I've even just started working more and more in mental health, and I just have so much going on. And even though it's all so exciting and I'm growing, I'm petrified. I'm so scared to put myself out there. It's taken a lot of courage for me to get to where I am now, to share my story and talk about my trauma without, all of that yucky emotion attached to it. But I still get afraid. And when I do, I procrastinate like nobody's business. I think I'm the procrastination queen. I can put something off and then I'm freaking out because I have like a day to get through it. Oh my God, what's going on? And my poor husband probably just sits there like, oh, yeah, she goes again, and then he's just like holding me together while I'm busy having an episode. We all do it. So there's no shame in it. And it's just awesome if we can create awareness around it and we can kind of move forward together, right? Find tools, find groups that you can just share your story with and have a giggle sometimes at the things that you do and move on instead of sitting with that and feeling guilty about the fact that you did that, right? So, if we think about self-sabotage, right, and how you can actually sabotage yourself. So this is obviously in your adult life now. And some things can be quite obvious. So some of that sabotage is obvious, but others are a little bit harder to recognize. So you really have to think about it and understand it a little bit more. So if we think about just a few that I mentioned, we have blaming others when things go wrong. Okay, so always pushing the blame. And of course, things might just happen, and sometimes they can be the fault of someone else. But I think it's important to actually take a step back and think about your role in that situation and what you may have done yourself and take responsibility for that rather than just shifting the blame. Of course, nobody wants to be wrong, but if you're wrong, own it. It's kind of freeing to just take responsibility. And we all make mistakes. So as long as you're not being vindictive and purposefully wronging someone, just own it. So another one that we can think about is choosing to walk away when things don't actually go smoothly. So a lot of the time it's not going your way and you just give up. You need to really check in with yourself and ask yourself if you really put any effort in before you gave up, And sometimes we don't even try because we're scared of failing. We can't fail if we try. No matter how many times we tried, it's not failure if we're still trying. But never trying, that kind of makes you feel crappy, doesn't it? And then, of course, the one I mentioned before was procrastination. The girls that I work with, I say work with, but the girls in my coaching program, we always have a giggle when we have our live calls because it's kind of like a joke, right? So like, how's the procrastination going? We often talk about procrastination because it is such a big thing that so many of us do. And I'd love to know if men procrastinate as much as women do. That's a fair question and one I definitely want answered. So Adam, if you're watching on the live or even a hashtag replay here for us, you can let me know the answer to that question. So another one would be picking fights with friends or partners. Just, I don't know, needing to be right all the time or needing to have the last say. Really pick your battles. But if you find yourself in a place where this is constantly happening, you need to check in with yourself and ask yourself, like, why? Why does this keep happening in my life? Hi, Annette. Hi. So awesome to have you here. Good to see you. And thank you for joining us on YouTube. So awesome. Oh, no, don't do that. Love your partner and friends. Absolutely. I agree 100%. But I think when that's just like a trigger response or a trauma response, sometimes we can't help it. So if you think about, being a child, and maybe the only way you get attention is to make somebody angry, right? Even though as a child, you don't understand that that negative attention is really not good, but it's the only attention you get. So if that's how you grew up, that's how you're going to behave to get attention. Or when you're not feeling like your needs are being met and stuff like that, you're going to pick a fight. You're going to go and make somebody angry because you know that they're going to get upset with you, and you're going to get that quick fix, I guess we can call it. So the other one I want to talk about is dating people that are not right for you. Okay. I can stick up both hands for this one. I have definitely done that. And for me personally, I think as I've done this work and this healing and stuff, I've realized that it all had to do with my sense of self-worth. And because I just felt so unworthy of love, and I so desperately just wanted to be accepted, I attracted like the worst partners ever, because they would feed off that, and I would just be like, oh yay, I'm being loved. No, that's not love. And you're just punishing yourself because you feel like you deserve it. So please, if the person doesn't check all the boxes, and if there are red flags, walk straight out of there. Don't leave yourself in that sort of situation, because then again, you're spending years trying to heal from those relationships, and it's just not worth it. Not at all. You can give yourself all the love in the world, you know, rather than put yourself in that situation. Honestly, it's just not worth it. I remember being there. It's difficult when you're unaware of your own behavior. Absolutely. Annette, I cannot agree with you more. And that is, I guess, what I hope to do with this show, is just create that awareness, because a lot of the time we're so trapped in that way of thinking and way of behaving. And we just think that this is my life because it's always been my life, that we accept it and we don't try and move forward or move out of it. And unfortunately, when you're in that state of being, so I might talk a lot about energy throughout my program, my podcast as well. But honestly, you're vibrating at that frequency, and that's what you're inviting into your life the whole time. So if you are always at this low negative vibration, what are you going to bring into your life? All of those things that are at the same vibration. And the moment you actually start doing the healing work, you start believing that you're worth more, and you start setting those boundaries, and you start elevating that vibration, you start to invite new people into your life, new relationships, new friendships, and all of those things that no longer serve you just simply fall away. And that's what I really talk about all the time, is if you just start doing the work and start believing that you deserve so much in this life, you don't even have to like work on anything else outside of you. Everything just starts falling into place. I promise you, and I'm living proof of it. My husband and we were together for 7 years, and I still didn't feel worthy. I still couldn't believe that this was happening. And, I was settled down, and I had a beautiful husband and 2 beautiful kids, and I was working. And, we had a good house. We had a nice car. We were doing all of the things that society wanted us to do. And I was just like, I can't deal with it anymore. It's too much. And I just decided I needed a break. And bless him, he gave me some space. And that's when I just decided I'm packing up my bags and I'm going to Thailand. Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming. Actually, most of my family were like, oh, she's just on one of her things again. She won't really do it, No one took me seriously. But within 3 weeks, my house was empty. My car was sold, bought a ticket, and I was going. I just realized that I had just ended up in hospital with my kidneys, and I missed my baby boy's first day at grade 1. And I remember sitting in that hospital bed and I was just so heartbroken. Like, what kind of mother misses the first day of grade 1? But I was so sick. I had a lot of kidney issues when I lived in South Africa. And that's when I just decided, like, something's got to give. I'm going to end up killing myself or dying if I don't change something, because I was just so miserable. My life was completely spiraling out of control. And that was it. I literally packed everything up and I went to Thailand. Best thing I ever did. But my husband saw that change in me when I actually just started living from my heart, what was good for me, and started just really becoming my authentic self and putting up boundaries, learning more, studying. It's just amazing to actually just do all that healing. I mean, obviously, in the beginning, it was awful. I spent weeks and weeks crying in a foreign country, just letting everything out. But that is when I just saw my whole life flash before me and realized that I was the one that created all of that mess. And it was just going to continue being a mess if I didn't do something to fix it, right? So that is basically what happened. And then my lovely husband decided my kids came to Thailand, of course. And then I was a single mommy of 2 in Thailand. And then my husband just saw how all of us just transformed and became so happy. Like, honestly, can't even tell you. Just get so excited. Thailand really is a beautiful place for healing. If anybody's interested, I just think Southeast Asia is a magical place because we did quite a few countries, and COVID didn't touch us, which was great. We spent the whole of 2020 just traveling, which was amazing. But just him seeing all of that and me just being happy made him realize that he needs to do the same and he wants that lifestyle. And he came to us in Thailand. We renewed our vows, and here we are. Now we're in the UK, and next we hope to actually have a van life. These things are possible, but it really takes you taking ownership of the way that your life is at the moment, being aware of the things that you are doing, and I know that it's not easy to be honest with yourself, but if you find more and more people that are sharing their story, and you just find your tribe and you heal as a collective, you can do it. Absolutely. I'm just going to go to the comments here. I came from a very loose boundaries, then rigid, then I learned healthy boundaries. Absolutely. And I think boundaries are such a tricky one because we don't learn these things as children, and from a young age already, our boundaries are always being crossed, and if you think about something as simple as knowing your place, or like what is important to you, you don't have that space to do that as a child, right? Because you constantly have to ask for permission to do simple things. You don't even get to learn what is important to you, what you want, what you don't want, what you want to allow in your life. Everything is told to you or taught to you. So I'm just hoping that through our healing, Annette, we can help our children have different lives, and in turn, they will raise their children differently. But I feel like we are all becoming so much more aware of these things, and a lot more people are willing to, actually work on them. And this is a beautiful thing to see. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I have started working more in mental health offline. So obviously I have an online business where I do a lot of trauma with the ladies I work with, predominantly moms. But offline, I've actually started working with people with severe learning difficulties. And it's just so amazing to have that opportunity and to understand it from all sides, all spectrums. Um, but through the training I've done, my heart just broke into like a million pieces, just understanding the history behind mental health and just understanding that no matter what we do in society, we are always going to have labels. So when I do a lot of this trauma work and talking about trauma, I don't want us to use labels. So yeah, we understand that there's a lot of mental health behind everything that we've gone through, but it doesn't mean that we need to be labeled and that's our identity for the rest of our lives. And I think that that's so important. This is something that's happened to us and we can heal from it. It's not who we are. So it's really important to remember that when you're on this journey, I think. Um, Oh, so awesome. I want to go there. Yes, you should absolutely go there. I can't wait to go back. I tell my husband often, just because I love the sun so much. So it's absolutely freezing cold here. And I don't know if my South African blood will ever really regulate to this UK winter madness. Um, but I tell him often, like when I'm grumpy with the weather, I'm like, I want to go home. And then he's like, I'm never going back to South Africa. And then I say, that's not my home. When I talk about home, it's Thailand, absolutely. And then we have to unlearn most of it. Absolutely. So I think once we create awareness around all of these things that we've gone through, it's shocking. Okay, because it's not only like our sabotaging behaviors, but it's everything. The way we do things, the way we think, the way we speak to ourselves in our mind, it really just controls everything. So it's realizing it, getting the shock of your life, like, oh my God, I'm so programmed, and then choosing, like, what are you going to do with that information? Are you just going to go straight back into your comfort zone and keep living this way? Or are you going to take that radical responsibility and choose your story and choose who you want to be for the rest of your life? And it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of courage, because I think sometimes, depending on how far this trauma goes back or how much trauma there is, sometimes you just feel like it's easier to just go back to sleep, and not look at these things. But I promise you, once you just like peel the first layer, you feel so much better. And then you can just keep going. Like, obviously, this is something that will always stay with us. It doesn't just go away, right? It never just goes away. We create these limiting beliefs, and I won't go into that now. I will definitely do a show on limiting beliefs, but I can go on forever. But those limiting beliefs, for example, will always be with us. And if we think about limiting beliefs, I'll just quickly touch on it. Okay, I can't help myself. But if we just think about limiting beliefs and we just think about the surface level beliefs, right? Those are the ones that we can pinpoint and see every day, and the ones that we've kind of picked up along the way. But if we really just go like a little bit further and just to the next layer, we can see that there's a core belief. So who you really believe you are to your core. And that is obviously what I mentioned at the beginning of the live, is that belief is created within the first 7 years of your life. Okay. And if you can understand that belief and how it shows up in your life, and you can start healing and working on that belief, obviously it never goes away. It becomes a very big part of who you are. Like today, my story is my purpose. It's my passion. It's what I love to do. I love to talk to people about it. I love to help, others go through the same things. And more than anything, I just want moms to realize that they're so freaking important. We play such an important role in life in general. We are the nurturers. We are the creators, and we always think that we are at the bottom of the list of things to do. Like, no, that's not how it should be at all, And I think so many of us just end up feeling absolutely burnt out. I, for one, did, to the point that I just wanted to run away. Didn't want to be a mom or a wife or a worker or anything. I just wanted to climb into a hole and be a nothing, honestly. So I think it's really important that we do all of these things, and that's why if there's anything you guys ever want to talk about, please just, tag me and say, let's talk about this next, or, whatever's important to you guys. That's what this is about. Okay, so I just want to go back here to it regulates. I flippin' hope so, because it's freezing. My husband laughs at me because he always says to me when I go and have a shower or a bath, he says to me, take your clothes with you, okay? Because it's obviously warmer there. And then he will see clothes on the bed, and he'll shout. He's like, "How you don't have your clothes?" And I just say, no, I have my first layer. That's my second layer. I'll do that in the bedroom, so it's so funny. I hope it really does regulate because it's too cold. Thank you for being a warrior. Great talk, Terri. My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with me. I think it's so important that we share our story. And I know that in the beginning, we can't do that. There's no way. Like a year ago, I would not be doing this. No way. Not on 3 different platforms live at the same time. But the more we just work on ourselves, and we work on our confidence, and we stop believing in ourselves and realizing like nobody else's opinion really matters. It's none of our business what anyone else thinks anyway, right? So the more work we do, the easier it becomes. And when you're ready to share your story and your message, just think about how many people you can help just by being that light, So like a lotus flower, we too have the ability to rise from the mud, bloom out of the darkness, and radiate into the world. I absolutely love that. I'm just going to pause for a moment. I won't put your name in there, but I have to copy this comment here. That is so beautiful, and I'll tell you why. I just first have to save this. Forgive me, I may do this sometimes, like lose myself, like I really am alone in the room. But the reason I absolutely love that is because the lotus flower is so important to me. So if you ever check out my page or whatever, and you're more than welcome to. So it's Terri Coaching. You can find me on Facebook. YouTube, I'm still trying to muscle up the courage to just dive straight into, and the time, of course. But if you look at my logo, it's a lotus. I have a lotus tattoo on my torso. And that's just because it's such a beautiful reminder, just like you've said here, of how far we can really come, and that we can really just grow from all of this yuck that was not our choice, mom, wife, etc., more labels. Absolutely. And if you think about these labels, mom, wife, worker, sister, mother, daughter, like they come with all this expectation and all this like, ugh, can't even think about it, like all of that society deems a woman should be. It's too much, far too much. So that's what I'm all about. Getting rid of all that junk, taking off the masks, just learning to be who you want to be and just be free and love life, because that's what it's about. We didn't come here to be stressed out and anxious and depressed. And no, that was not our purpose. So I want to just share a few tips. I've been going on for so long. Gosh, almost an hour. I'm just so excited though. So thank you for staying with me. I will be quick. I know that I'm supposed to only be an hour, but just if we think about some tips to use, like just to start overcoming it or start becoming aware of it. Just remember, right, that before I get into this, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I have so much to heal, so much to work on, like it's just too much. Am I ever going to be okay? Because that's kind of where our brain goes. And of course the ego is like, don't do it, it's not safe, don't go there. But just remember that all of these behaviors that you have and that you've brought from your past into now have taken years and years to to do and to manifest into your life. So it's so important to realize that if it's taken you 30, 40, 50 years, it's going to take some time to undo and to unlearn and to change. So be kind to yourself. Just learn to be kind and have compassion. Be that parent to that child that you needed. Okay. And as I said to you, whenever your ego is like acting up, just think about a child having a tantrum. Okay. Just nurture it and love it. So it's important to remember that behaviors that worked for you in the past generally don't help as much once those circumstances have actually changed. Okay. So if I give you another example, before I met my husband, my daughter's father, I was in a very abusive relationship with him. And that's created a lot of trauma in my daughter. So it's just so interesting to see it through the generations, But just that trauma of being in that abusive relationship, when I met my husband, and he does not do conflict. Like, my husband just shuts down and walks away. So in the beginning of our relationship, I wasn't used to that. I was ready, like, to defend myself, guns blazing, okay, fists up. And I was always screaming and shouting, and he would just switch off. And that used to make me so angry, I would lose my mind. I don't know how this poor man stayed with me, but that was a trauma response. And I was stuck in that behavior because I had to defend myself for so long. And that was my coping mechanism, or the way that I thought I had to keep myself safe, that it took me years to unlearn that. And it took my husband tons of patience and love. Bless him, poor man. But it took me so long to get through. And even being in a narcissistic relationship, the damage that does to you, to your self-esteem, your self-worth, those people really break you down. Even today, I catch myself being super insecure, like when it's about topics that person would make me feel really uncomfortable about. That's trauma that stays with you for a very long time. So I'm really not saying like, here's a pill and take it and everything's gone, because that's definitely not how it works. It takes a lot of commitment and willingness, And if we think about those behaviors and how they actually cause some harm, and if you keep doing them, it's not gonna help you progress and grow and obviously live that life that you want to learn. So I've been unlearning from 43. I'm now 56, but it has been the most rewarding time of my life. I can relate to that. It really is so rewarding, And just like, big up to you, honestly, Annette, like, just for you to even just wake up at 43 and decide that you needed to change something, that you needed to work on yourself, because sometimes we could just say like, oh, I've already lived my life. Like, why should I bother? But no, you should bother. You should care about yourself enough, right? So I absolutely love that. It makes me so excited to read that. So there is good news after all the doom and gloom. It is possible to obviously disrupt the self-sabotaging patterns, and it just takes a little bit of effort, but a little bit of effort every day, okay? So one thing I teach my ladies is to at least create a new habit of spending at least 5 minutes a day with yourself. Obviously, it needs to be more than 5, but in the beginning, especially if you're a procrastinator, and 5 is all you can manage, do 5. But do 5 every day. And when you're feeling up to it, do 6. So when we talk about overcoming procrastination, there's like a little way that you can do this. You can set a goal for yourself. Okay, I'm going to do this thing, but I'm only going to do it for 3 minutes. Okay? Put your timer on. Do it for 3 minutes. When you actually do it for 3 minutes, you feel accomplished. Like I said, I was going to do it and I did it. Yeah. Celebrate yourself. And then you'll see like, I'm already doing it. So Don't worry, I'll go a little bit longer than the 3 minutes, and that's how it eventually becomes so much easier to get through the things that you want to do, especially when it comes to self love. And we're not used to doing that for ourselves, just a little bit every single day. Like even cleaning the bathroom, just clean a little area and then take a break, clean another little area. Like, don't do all these huge things that are overwhelming and then we don't feel like doing it anymore. So, gotta run. Thank you, Terri. I look forward to listening to you again. Much love. Much love. Thank you so much for listening. And I will definitely catch you again soon. And I hope we can connect. Okay, so it's important to just identify these behaviors. And I know that it's not always easy to examine your actions, but it's important to just start paying attention. So after this live, just start paying attention to the things that you're doing in your life, the way you're acting, the way you talk to yourself, especially in your mind, the things that you're saying, all of that. And then I know it's so painful, but start admitting to yourself that you're doing these things, right? And of course, we don't just rush to this conclusion. It takes some time. And we do avoid these things as long as we possibly can. But it's time to face it. Like if you're watching me today, you have no choice. Like I've already turned on the light and now you got to keep going. Okay, so it's important to learn what sets you off. So these are the tips I'm leaving you with, and I'm going to rush through them because I'm over an hour. But you're going to learn what actually sets you off. So like, what are your triggers? And once you figure out your actual sabotaging behaviors, take note of when these things actually happen. Like in that moment, what triggered that behavior? What made you feel that way? Okay, what makes you act out when you act out? Make a note of that. Obviously, if you feel a little uncomfortable keeping a little notebook with you, you can check in with yourself at the end of every day. Like, how did my day go? Oh, actually, that set me off a little bit. Write it down. And the more you pay attention to these triggers and what sets you off, you will begin to see the patterns. And that's how we actually start to uncover where it comes from. So you might find that you don't like someone speaking to you in a certain tone of voice. And if you check in with that, it's because maybe your mom or dad or your uncle always used to come and shout at you, and that's how he made you feel. So now when someone else makes you feel that way, you lose your marbles. Okay, just as an example. Then the second tip I want to give you is practice getting comfortable with failure. Okay, it's normal to feel afraid of rejection and failure and other emotional, discomforts and pain that we have. These things are generally not fun to deal with. So you can then learn to actually take steps to avoid them. Okay, avoid those times of feeling uncomfortable. And like I said in the beginning, it's okay to fail. I don't even think it's failing, but obviously we always feel like a failure because we went to school and we were always taught that we need to be better than the other person next to us. Otherwise we fail because we don't think like other kids, we fail. Okay. So just think about where it comes from. So the third thing you can do, and I really, really encourage you to do, is to talk about it. So if you notice certain patterns keep appearing in your relationships or in your work life or just in your personal life, even with families, try talking to the people that you're closest to about them. Okay, so I do this with my husband. My husband is my soundboard. Find somebody that you trust. Okay, and when you pick up these patterns, you can say like, hey, I noticed this. What is my role in this? Like, what have you noticed? What am I doing? That's if you're prepared to take the honesty of somebody else. You can't ask somebody else and then be angry with them for what they said, okay? Not allowed to do that. And then the next thing you can do is like just identify what you really want. I think a lot of the time we don't pay attention to our actual wants and needs. Okay, we're waiting for somebody else to tell us what it should be because, again, that's what we were taught to do. But self-sabotage can happen when you're actually looking for a way out. So these behaviors help suggest that something about your situation isn't working for you. Okay, so it's important to pay attention to those things. And this really shows up with your boundaries. Okay, because I think a lot of us lack boundaries. Okay. And most importantly, know that the things that happened to you in your past or in front of you when you were a child were not your fault. Remind yourself that and just begin healing. Be willing to heal. Okay. Good. So that's my story. I know that I've been going on for so long, and I just am so grateful for you that are still on here with me. Just, breathe through this. I think that we really take life seriously, and unfortunately, we live in a world where we are stressed and we are always in fight or flight. We're always trying to survive. So find your people, find the people that understand you, and just connect with them. And I'm always here. Please connect with me, connect with all of us warriors. You don't have to do any of this alone. You're amazing. Thank you so much. I will continue to try to work on myself, to learn, to grow. Exciting when peeling off the layers that we no longer need, so that living life becomes a lifestyle and not a battle. Absolutely. And that's the thing, just keep peeling those layers. My friends and I like to joke about layers, because you just feel like, oh, so much relief when one of those layers have come off and you're like, yes, I mastered this one. Then a week later, you're like, ugh, hit with the next layer, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, here I go again. But it's liberating, absolutely liberating. So you just got to keep going and be proud of yourself and celebrate yourself. If you're working and you're learning and you're growing, keep celebrating every single little win. Celebrate it. Remind yourself that you're not the person you were yesterday. Even if you're not exactly where you want to be, you're at least moving in the right direction. Okay. Thank you all so much for watching. And again, if you catch the replay, let me know that you did. And you can always reach out to me. If you've got any questions and you want to talk about anything trauma related, but you would want to do it more in a personal or private setting, please pop me a message in my inbox. It's always open and we can definitely connect. Okay. Bye for now. See you in 2 weeks.